The biggest risk right now is not just Iran and the US fighting each other. It is what happens if the Strait of Hormuz stays blocked for a prolonged period. Right now, shipping is almost at a standstill. Oil is jumping, markets are nervous, and India is already feeling the pressure. Every second of this closure costs billions. Welcome back to Yearn to Grow. This channel is about understanding finance and insurance clearly and calmly. No pressure, no shortcuts, just clarity. Today, we break down a situation that could redefine the global economy in 2026. This is a deep dive into the pulse of world energy and trade security. We will follow our signature five-part structure. We'll define the problem, find the hidden insights, explain the mechanics, realize the impact, and end with a takeaway. To understand why this is so dangerous, we have to look back at history. The tanker war of the 1980s saw over 500 ships attacked in these same waters. Back then, the world realized that Hormuz was the jugular vein of the global economy. If it stops pumping, the entire system begins to fail. For 8 years, Iran and Iraq targeted the world's energy supply. It taught us that geography is destiny in the world of maritime trade. But 2026 is fundamentally different. The scale of global interdependence has reached a point where even a minor delay triggers a domino effect across continents. This brings us to the problem. The current standstill is not just about oil, it is about a complete collapse of confidence in the world's most vital waterway. Geographically, it is a nightmare for logistics. The strait is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. That is less than the distance of a marathon. The actual shipping lanes are only 2 miles wide in each direction. Imagine trying to move the world's energy through a straw. That is the reality here. The surrounding terrain is controlled by high ground on both sides, making ships sitting ducks for even the most basic surface-to-sea weaponry. As we speak, hundreds of ships are anchored outside the Gulf, waiting for a signal that may never come. Confidence has evaporated among the world's insurers. Let's look at the numbers. Every single day, 21 million barrels of oil pass through this gap. That is equivalent to 21% of the total global consumption. Without this flow, global refineries lose their primary feed. In a matter of weeks, the strategic reserves of entire nations begin to look dangerously thin. But it isn't just about oil. 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, the fuel that powers industry in Japan and Europe, comes through here. If LNG stops flowing, power grids in major industrial hubs become unstable. We are looking at a potential deindustrialization of entire regions if this persists. Many think pipelines can solve the problem. Let's address the bypass myth. Saudi Arabia has the East-West pipeline, but its capacity is limited. The East-West pipeline can handle about 5 million barrels per day. That is only a quarter of what normally flows through the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE has its own pipeline to the port of Fujairah, bypassing the strait, but its capacity is even smaller at just 1.5 million barrels. Even if every pipeline is running at 100% capacity, we still have a shortfall of nearly 15 million barrels per day. There is no plan B for the world. This leads us to the insight. The real crisis is moving beyond energy. It is moving into the molecular building blocks of our modern existence. Consider naphtha. It is a petrochemical byproduct that serves as the foundation for the plastics and medical equipment we use every single day. Naphtha supply chains are being severed. In Japan and Southeast Asia, manufacturers of sterile gloves and medical goods are seeing their stocks vanish. Then there is sulfuric acid. Indonesia and the Congo rely on it to extract nickel and cobalt, the two most critical minerals for the EV revolution. If sulfuric acid doesn't reach these mines, the global production of electric vehicle batteries hits a wall. The green energy transition is effectively stalled. Let's talk about the tech sector. Qatar supplies 1/3 of the world's helium. It is essential for semiconductor manufacturing and fiber optics. Without Qatari helium, the global chip-making industry faces an existential threat. Spot prices for helium have already jumped by 100%. Your internet, your devices, your communication networks, they all depend on a gas that is currently trapped behind a naval blockade in the Gulf. This is the delayed crisis. The true impact on technology won't be seen today, but in the empty shelves and rising prices of 6 months from now. Now we enter the explanation. We must understand why food security has suddenly become a geopolitical weapon in the Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf is the world's primary hub for nitrogen-based fertilizers. It accounts for 35% of global urea and 30% of ammonia exports. The closure of Hormuz coincides exactly with the spring planting season in the northern hemisphere. This is a catastrophic timing error for global agriculture. If farmers cannot get their fertilizer today, crop yields for wheat, corn, and soy will drop dramatically by the autumn. We are planting the seeds of hunger. In hubs like New Orleans, urea prices have already jumped by 32%. The cost of food on your table is being decided in a 21-mile stretch of water. The shock is systemic. AkzoNobel, the maker of Dulux paint, is warning of high-teen increases in raw material costs due to the disruption. Travel is extremely vulnerable. Europe sources 75% of its jet fuel from the Middle East. Jet fuel prices have doubled in just 2 months. Airlines like United and travel giants like TUI have already withdrawn their financial guidance. The cost of air travel is about to enter a new era. Every single shipping container is now carrying an emergency surcharge. This is a direct tax on the consumer, hidden within the price of every finished good. Now let's look at the realization for India. For us, this is not a distant geopolitical story. It is a direct blow to our national budget. Brent moving above $100 pulled our Nifty 50 down nearly 1%. In a country that imports 80% of its oil, energy prices are the ultimate trigger. The rupee fell to 93.7952, a historic low. Every paisa the rupee loses makes our imports more expensive and fuels the fire of domestic inflation. The RBI has been forced to intervene to cushion the fall. We are burning through our foreign exchange reserves just to maintain a sense of stability. This translates directly to the kitchen table. When shipping and fuel costs rise, the cost of transporting food across India rises with it. No one is immune. But India has started protecting itself. The government approved a 129.8 billion rupee guarantee for a maritime insurance pool. This is a masterstroke. Why does this matter? Because war risk premiums for ships entering the Gulf have surged by a staggering 1,000%. Global insurers are backing out. By creating our own insurance pool, we ensure that Indian trade doesn't stop just because a foreign underwriter is afraid of the geopolitical risk. We have also planned a $1.5 billion sovereign guarantee fund. This is about national resilience. It is about taking control of our own economic destiny. Let's expand on the math of this risk. For every $10 increase in the price of oil, India's current account deficit widens by $15 billion. That is why the $100 level for Brent is a psychological and economic red line for our policymakers. It is the point where growth begins to stall. Our strategic petroleum reserves in Padur and Visakhapatnam are now our primary defense. We are tapping into months of stored oil to maintain the pulse. But these reserves are not infinite. They are a bridge. We are buying time for diplomacy to work, but the clock is ticking against us every single day. We must also consider the carbon footprint. Ships rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope are adding 10 to 14 days to their journey. This is a logistics disaster. This extra distance means more fuel, more emissions, and more wear and tear on the global fleet. The cost of zero-risk shipping is incredibly high. The backlog of 2,000 stranded vessels will take months to clear, even if the strait reopened today. The shock has already been baked into the system. Supply chain managers across the world are now rewriting their just-in-time models. We are entering the era of just-in-case inventory management. Legally, the situation is complex. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, ships have the right of innocent passage through the strait. But when a regional power declares a security zone, international law meets the reality of naval power. The rule of law is being replaced by the rule of force. This is why the US and its allies are maintaining a heavy naval presence. It is a show of force meant to deter further escalation and protect trade. But deterrence is fragile. A single mistake, a single misunderstood signal could turn a standstill into a full-scale maritime conflict. The stakes are absolute. Let's look at corporate earnings. Companies with low margins are the first to fail in this environment. We are seeing a natural selection in the business world. Firms that relied on cheap Middle Eastern energy inputs are now seeing their competitive advantage evaporate. They must adapt or face obsolescence. Ironically, this crisis may accelerate the transition to renewables in the long term, but in the short term, it is causing a massive return to coal and wood. Energy transitions are never smooth. They are born out of necessity and forged in the fires of geopolitical shocks. Hormuz is the latest catalyst. We must prepare for the second wave of inflation. If energy and food prices stay elevated, central banks will be forced to keep interest rates high. This means the era of cheap money is truly over. The cost of borrowing for homes, businesses, and governments will remain a significant burden. For the individual investor, this is a time for caution. The geopolitical risk premium is not just a theory, it is a direct deduction from your portfolio's value. Diversification into safe havens like gold and the US dollar is a natural reaction, but true resilience comes from understanding the underlying data. India's future depends on our maritime security. We are building a navy that can protect our trade routes from the Gulf to the Malacca Strait. A strong navy is the ultimate insurance policy for an island-like economy like ours. We must be able to project power to protect our prosperity. This is the takeaway for our policymakers. Energy security and naval strength are two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other. Our blue economy is our greatest asset. We must nurture it, protect it, and understand that it is always vulnerable to shocks in far-off straits. Let's look at the correlation between copper, lithium, and oil. When one moves violently, the others follow. The entire commodity complex is in flux. Copper prices are surging because the energy needed to mine and process them has become prohibitively expensive. This hits the electronics and construction sectors. From the wiring in your home to the steel in our bridges, everything is becoming more expensive. The Hormuz crisis is a cost-push inflation nightmare. The purchasing power of your hard-earned money is being eroded by events thousands of miles away. It is the ultimate lesson in globalized vulnerability. We must also talk about the psychology of the market. Fear is a more powerful motivator than greed in the short term. We are in a state of hypervigilance. Traders are reacting to every headline, every rumor, and every social media post. This volatility creates opportunities for some, but ruin for many. In this environment, the only real hedge is a cool head and a clear understanding of the underlying mechanics. Do not let the headlines dictate your strategy. Seek clarity, seek the data, and remember that every crisis eventually ends, but those who are prepared are the ones who come out stronger. This brings us to the takeaway. The Hormuz crisis is a wake-up call for the world. It is a reminder that our prosperity is built on fragile foundations. We must build a more resilient system, one that isn't dependent on a single 21-mile choke point. We must diversify our energy and our trade routes. For the individual, the takeaway is to stay informed. Don't just watch the news. Understand the why behind the what. That is the mission of Yearn to grow. Knowledge is the only asset that doesn't depreciate in a crisis. It is your ultimate insurance policy. No pressure, no shortcuts, just the facts. Think of the great founders of history. They didn't build their empires in times of peace. They built them in the middle of chaos by seeing the hidden opportunities. Resilience isn't about avoiding the storm. It's about learning to navigate it. It's about maintaining your clarity when everyone else is losing theirs. Growth is always possible, even in the most hostile environments. You just have to find the path. You have to yearn to grow every single day. The world is changing and the Hormuz crisis is just the latest chapter. Stay calm, stay informed, and never stop looking for the truth. Let's look at scenario A, a quick reopening. If diplomacy succeeds and the strait opens next week, we will see an immediate relief rally in the markets. Oil prices would drop back toward the $80 range, and the Indian rupee would likely recover a significant portion of its recent losses. Confidence returns. However, the backlog of ships would still take a month to clear. Shipping rates would remain elevated as vessels scrambled to meet their original schedules. The risk premium would fade, but the lesson would remain. Many companies would still proceed with their plans to diversify their supply chains. Now, scenario B, a prolonged blockade. This is the black swan event. If Hormuz remains closed for 3 months or more, the global economy enters a recession. Oil would likely breach the $150 level. Inflation would hit double digits in many developing nations, and global trade would shrink by a measurable percentage. The just-in-time model would effectively collapse. Manufacturers would be forced to halt production as essential chemical and mineral inputs run dry. This is the nightmare scenario that policymakers are working day and night to avoid. It is a world of rationing, localized trade, and intense geopolitical friction. Finally, Scenario C, the new normal, a state of perpetual tension where the strait is partially closed and heavily militarized. This is most likely. In this scenario, trade continues, but at a much higher cost. The geopolitical risk premium becomes a permanent feature of the global economy. Insurers like India's maritime pool become essential permanent fixtures. Every barrel of oil comes with a built-in tax to pay for its naval protection. The world adapts, but it is a less efficient, more expensive world. It is a world where security always takes precedence over economic efficiency. In this environment, what should the individual investor do? First, maintain high liquidity. Cash is your optionality in a world of volatile assets. Look for defensive gems, companies with strong balance sheets and essential products that people need, regardless of the geopolitical situation. Avoid highly leveraged firms that are vulnerable to rising interest rates. In scenario B or C, debt is a death sentence for many small and medium enterprises. But most importantly, invest in your own education. Understand the macroeconomic forces at play. Don't be a victim of the headlines, be a student of the facts. Let's look closer at the 129.8 billion rupee insurance pool. This isn't just a number, it is a mechanism to stabilize our maritime trade. When a private insurer sees a missile threat, they walk away. The government pool steps in, providing the necessary sovereign backstop to keep the ship moving. This allows Indian exporters to meet their commitments and prevents our ports from becoming ghost towns. It is the ultimate economic shield in 2026. It is the reason your groceries are still on the shelf and our factories are still running. It is a quiet, powerful defense of our national interest. So will Hormuz close? The answer is that it is already effectively closed to the world we knew before February 28, 2026. The world has changed. We must adapt. We must stay calm. We must look at the data and find the path forward. Hormuz is the pressure point, but clarity is our strength. India is feeling the spillover, but we are also leading the way in financial resilience. The whole world is watching the next move, and we are ready. So this is no longer just a geopolitical headline. It is a real market shock. Hormuz is the pressure point, and the whole world is watching. If this explanation helped you see things a little more clearly, that is exactly what this channel is meant for. We will continue breaking down finance and insurance concepts step by step in a way that feels practical and manageable. If you find this helpful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you do not miss future videos.